This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. In the next 60 minutes, we'll run through the stories you need to know about from Africa and beyond. Here's what's coming up tonight. The United Kingdom and the European Union agree on a post-Brexit trade deal. We'll have the details. South Africa's property market is set for a rebound buoyed by low interest rates. And Egypt secures a $500 million loan to support social housing projects for low-income earners. Our starting point tonight, however, is South Africa, where the property market is shaping for some decent growth over the next 24 months. And that's driven mainly by interest rates that are at historically low levels. The repo rate, for instance, slashed by at least 300 basis points between January and July during the COVID-19 slump. But the Reserve Bank has now kept the policy rate steady at 3.5% in its last meeting in November. And despite this, properties are being snapped up by entry-level buyers and those who are looking for upgrades. CGTN's Julie Shire starts us off tonight.
South Africa's interest rates have not been this low for the last 50 years. A 3% drop in interest rates this year has made homes more affordable and helped the property market quickly shake off the COVID-19 gloom. Some financiers have seen a 20% year-on increase in bond applications, mainly from first-time buyers.
This interest rate phenomenon is driving a bottom-up demand cycle in our property market. And so it's the properties at the lower end of the price spectrum that are seeing the most demand. We see our average borrower borrowing about $80,000 US, $1.25 million rand, and that's kind of our sweet spot.
It's not just new entrants on the hunt for good bargains. The prolonged lockdown still has many working from home and a need for more comfortable and spacious lodgings.
We don't know when COVID is going to stop or when we'll ever get back to the normality that we once enjoyed. This has all accentuated the need for increased full title sales. So houses and clusters are more preferred, and we've seen a definite softening of the sectional title market, especially with 1 and 2 bedroom units.
Sentiment is also driving this market. The pandemic has brought the longevity of life into question. There's now an urgency around long-term decisions. Fred Venter is selling his home in Sandton Home to live out his dream near the ocean.
We've decided as a wife and husband that we want a different life going forward. And being from the coast, that's what appeals to me. And I want to move back to the coast, essentially, and in particular somewhere along the Cape.
South Africa's property market last saw a boom like this in 2015. Estate agents predict it will remain this way as long as interest rates stay low and consumer appetite doesn't wane.
For as long as we're in the single digits, we're in the boom time. So we've got a long way to go back to 10% from 7%. What we have seen with our Reserve Bank in the last 2 decades is when they have increased rates, they've done so very, very slowly. And so the Reserve Bank now is talking about potentially 2 quarter-point increases in 2021. That still means that we exit 2021 round about or below even 8%.
Activity in the luxury end, however, remains subdued. With the economy languishing deep in junk status, it's not likely to pick up until there's more certainty in the market. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Tunisia's national carrier is banking on the recovery of the aviation industry for a resumption of its normal pace of business activity in 2021. Tunisia announced that part of its top priority will be to remedy the decline in the number of passengers, which has fallen by at least 70% compared to 2019. Here's CGTN's Adin Chouachi with the details.
The managing director of civil aviation at the Ministry of Transport and Logistics explains that Tunisia's strategic plan in 2021 will offer solutions to save the company, which is facing many difficulties because of travel restrictions.
The COVID-19 vaccine has given us hope. We are optimistic because controlling the pandemic will allow Tunis Air to resume normal business activity in the second quarter of 2021. The repercussions of the global health crisis on aviation are unprecedented in the whole world. Several sectors depend on air transport, especially tourism in Tunisia, which is the pillar of the national economy.
Tunisian authorities will increase the company's capital while improving its financial balances. Aviation experts assert that a planned reduction in the number of employees is needed in the next 3 years.
Our vision is to make Tunis Air a competitive company. That is why the state has put in place a structural reform plan to improve the company's governance and financial health. Creating a balance between the number of staff, the fleet, the airline size, and its commercial network is a top priority.
Analysts argue that Tunisair will lay off thousands of workers to ease the financial difficulties that led to the grounding of aircraft due to the lack of spare parts. The layoff cost is estimated at $63 million.
The social plan consists of laying off 1,200 employees. It was approved by the former government, but the number could be much higher to reduce the balance sheet. The norm in the world is that each plane needs about 80 employees, but at Tunisair, each plane has 165 workers. Overhiring has deepened the crisis in recent years.
According to the Transport Department, Tunisair will abandon unprofitable international routes next year. The state-owned company will stop serving some destinations in Africa and Europe following an unprecedented demand collapse due to the COVID-19 crisis. The Minister of Transport and Logistics has declared that the state will help Tunisair cope with the dearth of passengers amid stay-at-home orders in Europe. However, an urgent reform and development plan is necessary in order to save the national airline. Abdel Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
On to West Africa now. The growth of Nigeria's small and medium-sized enterprises is being viewed as one of the quickest routes towards an economic rebound for Africa's largest economy. You see, Nigeria's oil-dependent economy last month dipped into recession for the second time in 4 years. Oil prices have gone up a bit, but the outlook is still fairly grim for a country where crude accounts for roughly 90% of foreign income earnings and about half of government revenue. From the federal capital of Abuja, here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekala.
From the designs to the construction of footwears, that's a trade Lawrence Odinaka has spent the past 6 years doing. The business earns him an average $150 weekly. He has also trained over 100 youths for free, but he's considering closing shop due to the disruptions caused by the COVID-19 economic fallout.
Before pandemic, the work, it was so amazing. It was so amazing and everything was flowing well. And then we are producing, as in a week, I do produce at least 20 pieces in a week. But during the pandemic, everything falls back. Yeah, things really fall apart, and the thing really hit us down. Because we that are working with raw materials, we find it so difficult to even get materials. But now, during the pandemic, 5,000 naira you cannot see in a week. Yes, because everywhere was so shut down. People are still fighting on how to feed their family.
The small and medium enterprise sector has been supporting wealth creation in Nigeria. The National Bureau of Statistics reports that in the past 5 years, SMEs have contributed about 48% to the national GDP. The sector accounts for 84% of employments, but is now battling to survive. The combined impact of rising inflation, COVID-19 pandemic, and current economic recession have caused many businesses to shut down. Government has been making efforts to revive the sector through various interventions, but that hasn't yielded much.
It can be better. Like Oliver Twist, we are constantly asking for more. We cannot kill the government. The government herself was also caught unawares. Government is introducing the survival funds of 30,000. If you have staff of these 3 and above, you can access it so they can help you so you don't go down. They are also helping you to give you waivers for tax and so on so that you don't disengage your staff. But they need to do more to increase consumer spending. Government needs to do more to increase production. It needs to engage the private sector more to see whether the private sector can help extend the financial inclusion.
Nigeria's weakened SME sector has translated to massive job loss, rise in poverty and insecurity. Experts are certain that SMEs remain the surest hope to kickstart Nigeria's economic recovery. They're asking government to engage industry players in driving policies that would support and boost operations of SMEs in the country. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Quick run through some company news, starting in the world of port logistics. The global operator DP World has signed a deal to develop a new deepwater port in Senegal. Now that deal is worth over $1 billion. It's DP World's biggest single investment anywhere in Africa to date. DP World runs operations in 40 countries, as far east as Brisbane, Australia, and as far west as Prince Rupert in Canada. Over the years, the company has won concessions to develop commercial ports and logistical hubs at several sites across the continent, and that includes Somaliland, Algeria, Mozambique, and Djibouti. In East Africa, Kenya Central Bank has launched a fresh review of the country's national payment system. That plan could force the market share leader, Safaricom, to offer rivals access to its vast network of mobile money outlets for seamless transfer of cash among telecommunications companies. Safaricom has been uncomfortable with the push. It argues that move will expose its lucrative M-Pesa mobile money platform to stiff competition. Over 30 million people in Kenya use M-Pesa. That particular service has over 90% market share. The British telecommunications group Vodafone says it plans to start experimenting with 5G mobile networks in Egypt's new administrative capital. With 44 million subscribers and a 40% market share, Vodafone Egypt is the North African nation's biggest single mobile operator. Vodafone has been focusing its global footprint on Europe and Africa ever since Nick Reed took over as CEO back in 2018. And for the first time in 3 years, the South African restaurant franchisor Spur Corporation made some progress in winning over shareholders who voted at its AGM on its executive pay policy. Spur Corporation, whose brands include Burger Joint, Rocco Mamas and Panarotti Pizza and Pasta, held its AGM earlier this week on Wednesday. One of the two votes in favour of its remuneration policy passed with 77.36% approval. It failed earlier in 2018 and 2019. That's a run through your headlines. You're watching Global Business Africa. Time for a short break. Here's what's coming up next. Egypt secures a $500 million loan to support social housing projects for low-income earners. And Nigeria's Senate has approved the 2021 budget, but it raises spending ceiling by $1.3 billion. There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN. See the difference. Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back to the program. Let's head over to West Africa. The Nigerian Senate passed the country's budget for the 2021 fiscal year, and it increased the spending ceiling by $505 billion naira. That's roughly $1.3 billion. Back in October, the country's president, Muhammadu Buhari, presented a budget estimate of about 13 trillion naira to the National Assembly. But lawmakers raised that spending ceiling to 13.588 trillion naira, roughly $35.7 billion. And at the time, they argued that there was a bit of underprojection in revenue in the initial estimates that the president had submitted to legislators. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmos with the details.
It's not the first time the Parliament would be adjusting the budget estimates upwards. And like in previous cases, the lawmakers have an explanation for the increment.
There is a remarkable increase in Nigeria's oil price, which is hovering between $47 and $50 per barrel in the international market. This is above the benchmark price of $40 per barrel approved by the National Assembly. C, the discovery of underprojection of the total revenue to the tune of 100 billion. D, the need to enhance the structure of the budget to allow for the reflation of the economy in order to accelerate the process of taking out the economy from its current state of recession.
The lawmakers left the key budget parameters untouched. Oil price benchmark is at $40 per barrel, exchange rate at 379 naira to a dollar, GDP projection at 3%. Daily oil production output is at 1.86 million per barrel, including condensate, an inflation rate rounding off at 11.95%. Analysts say most of the projections are overly optimistic.
Beyond the revenue from oil, the major revenues will be coming from other sources of other independent sources, which I think will be difficult to achieve. Revenues from customs, revenues from Nigerian Post Authorities, and government enterprises. I do not think the economy would have sufficiently recovered as to lead to achievement of the budget provisions.
With a revenue projection of under $21 billion, Nigeria would have to borrow substantially to fund the budget. And that will drive up the country's debt profile, which many have been complaining about lately.
If you even look at the public finances of the government is borrowing to fund the recurrent expenditure. Every kobo that the government said it has spent on infrastructure is borrowed. And as we speak now, we're also seeing a ballooning of our debt service in relation to our revenue. So we will be struggling to earn enough revenue to even service our debt and pay a fraction of our recurrent expenditure.
The budget is expected to take effect when the president signs it into law. It's not yet clear when that will happen, but the lawmakers have also extended the lifespan of the 2020 budget to March next year.
There will be two budgets running. Funds from 2021 up to 31st March 2021, and then the implementation of the 2021 budget itself to start from January. That is absolute fight against the recession we are suffering from. And with a projected 3% growth in our GDP in the 2021 budget, we believe that the recession Nigeria is in will be over before the end of the first quarter.
Nigeria, like every other country, is reeling from the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. In addition to the prevailing global economic recession, the Nigerian government is faced with the Herculean task of getting the country out of its own recession. And it's no doubt banking on the budget to do just that. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
In North Africa, Egypt's government has approved a $500 million loan between the North African state and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development as a part of the World Bank. Now, the loan is aimed at supporting social housing projects for low-income earners. It's part of the World Bank's inclusive housing program. So far, that has benefited more than 280,000 households across the country since 2015. With the details, here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim.
The expensive real estate market in Egypt has prompted many low-income earners to build illegal houses. By 2013, the number of informal settlements exceeded 1,200, hosting about 22 million people. It places a huge burden on the country's infrastructure and had become the epicenter for drugs and crime. Once in office, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi embarked on a mission to eradicate these illegal areas and slums.
There were strong intentions to solve this issue, unlike with previous governments which have failed to stop the spread of slums. The first phase concentrated on eradicating the high-risk living areas, which house over 1 million people. 95% of them have been evacuated and developed into modern housing projects. It's worth noting that what was spent on this from 2018 to 2014 was about 652 million Egyptian pounds, which is an extremely low amount. The current leadership spent 17 billion Egyptian pounds from 2014 until now and is still spending more.
The inhabitants of slums are moved into newly built modern cities with all required services. To avoid the recurrence of this problem, money from the state budget and support from the IBRD are used for building social housing units for middle and low-income earners under the slogan of the 1 Million Housing Units Project.
This project was done at a massive cost of 250 billion Egyptian pounds and was used to build 1 million units at a rate of 300,000 units per year for the youth, the divorced and widowed women, and also medium and low-income earners. The country subsidizes 60% of the unit price and provides payment facilities for up to 20 years. For rent, it's as low as 450 Egyptian pounds per month.
The Egyptian president has vowed to fulfill his promise during elections of a house for every Egyptian by 2030. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Egypt is working to boost its supply of coronavirus vaccines, and this comes as a number of recorded infections continues to rise in the country. The government reported 911 new COVID-19 cases on Wednesday and 42 deaths. Here's CGTN's Tunisia Balala with the details.
Egypt has signed a contract to get vaccines developed by China national pharmaceutical group Sinopharm. The country is expecting to get more deliveries of the much-needed vaccine after receiving the first batch of 50,000 doses earlier this month. Medical staff and people with chronic diseases would get priority.
There are two types of people who will get priority for the vaccine. The people most vulnerable, working in quarantine hospitals, and the frontliners who are facing the virus, whether they be health professionals or nurses, administrative or other types of workers in quarantine hospitals. In conjunction, we will prioritize those who will be at high risk if exposed to the virus, such as people with chronic illnesses and the elderly. And of course, the most pressing of these illnesses are people with kidney failure, cancer, diabetes, and high blood pressure.
The country has, over the past couple of weeks, seen a rise in infections. Government is ensuring that there is more hospitals to handle the cases.
We were operating 101 hospitals. We added 111, and we just added another 150 quarantine hospitals to make the total number at 363 hospitals across the 27 governorates working on managing the pandemic. This was around the same number we had in the first phase of the virus, with 35,000 beds and 4,500 ICU units and 2,500 ventilators, and we are currently adding another 250 ventilators.
On Wednesday, the cabinet extended a series of measures to curb the spread of the virus, which include banning large gatherings to celebrate the new year. In total, Egypt has nearly 127,000 infections and 7,000 deaths. Health officials say the real number is likely higher because of the relatively low rate of coronavirus testing. Tunisia Balala, CGTN.
Ghana says it's in the process of also acquiring COVID-19 vaccines. The country signed up for the World Health Organization's COVAX program, which seeks to vaccinate poor and vulnerable persons against the coronavirus, and it's essentially a bulk purchase facility for low-income countries. But some Ghanaian nationals are uncertain that they'll take the vaccine when it is available. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai explores why from Accra.
The WHO's COVAX program aims to supply 2 billion doses of the COVID-19 vaccines to low and middle-income countries by the end of next year. While some of the world's richest countries have reserved enough doses to immunize their own multiple times over, many low and middle-income nations may be able to vaccinate at most 20% of their populations in 2021. As Dr. Kwame Amponsa Achiano from the Ghana Health Service explains, that includes Ghana.
We have signed on to what we call the Advanced Market Commitment, which involves about 92 countries and over. So that is where we are now. The earliest we can get a vaccine to come into the country for delivery will be, for service delivery will be around March, April.
The first tranche of doses through the COVAX program are expected to arrive during the first quarter of 2021. The WHO says those doses will be earmarked to protect health and social care workers. Vaccinating the rest of the population will come later. Not all Ghanaians say they will sign up to get vaccinated.
Because the education has not gone down well with us. So we have to be educated really well on the vaccine and the side effects it have on us for us to know that whether we take it or we won't take it.
I will go for the COVID-19 vaccine if it's brought into the country and will help stop the spread of the disease.
Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo says the safety of the vaccine is a major priority for the government.
I'm aware of the anxieties relating to the safety and efficacy of newly developed vaccines. Government will ensure that the COVID-19 vaccines to be deployed in the country are effective and are safe.
And as Ghana waits for the vaccines to become available, the government and health experts are making plans to raise awareness about them. They say the vaccines are just the first step to save lives. After that, people need to actually be inoculated. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
We're fast approaching 18:30 GMT. Time for another break. Here's what's coming up. The UK will place most of the country under tighter pandemic restrictions amid a surge in COVID-19 cases. And the arrival of a COVID vaccine has the US travel industry preparing for a rebound.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what do you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are these stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to the program. These are some of the stories making your headlines at this hour. Starting in Nigeria, another new strain of the coronavirus appears to have emerged in Nigeria, that's according to the head of Africa's disease control body. But he did caution that more investigation is needed. Now, this news comes after the UK and South Africa both reported new strains of the virus that appear to be more contagious, at least a lot more transmissible, and that's led to new travel restrictions and turmoil in markets. Somalia's Electoral Commission has announced dates for the much-awaited Senate elections that will start next week. However, it failed to provide details on when the presidential elections will be held. Somalia's opposition, however, has maintained it will boycott the elections. It has also raised concerns about the Election Commission and its ability to hold free, fair and credible polls. Ethiopia's military has killed 42 armed men who it accused of taking part in a massacre in the western Benishangul-Gumuz region. State-affiliated Fana TV made that report. On Wednesday, the country's Human Rights Commission said gunmen killed more than 100 people in a dawn attack in the village of Bekoji. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali said forces were deployed to the region on Thursday, to an area which has seen some regular ethnic violence. And finally, Tunisia's Environment Minister Mustafa Leroui has been arrested. This follows the shipment of hundreds of containers full of mislabeled household and hospital waste from Italy to Tunisia. However, those containers were discovered to be holding tons of household and hospital waste, and the import of that is banned by Tunisia. It then raised speculation that it could be part of an illicit trade in waste products. That's a run through your headlines. Now on to one of the big stories of the year, really. The UK has finally clinched a narrow Brexit trade deal with the European Union. That deal comes just 7 days before it formally exits one of the world's biggest trading blocs. The British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has called it a good deal for the whole of Europe, driving jobs and prosperity in future. The EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen said it was a fair and balanced deal. These were some of their comments after the announcement.
That we can finally put Brexit behind us and Europe is continuing to move forward. In German, the European Union has shown unity over this time. 450 million people, the biggest single market in the world, and we were able to rely on these assets. It's very important.
Let me give you 3 examples. First of all, competition in our single market will be fair and remain so. The EU rules and standards will be respected. We have effective tools to react if fair competition is distorted and impacts our trade. Secondly, we will continue with the UK in all areas of mutual interest. For example, in the field of climate change, energy, security and transport. Together, we still achieve more than we do apart.
And so I'm very pleased to tell you this afternoon that we have completed the biggest trade deal yet, worth £660 billion a year, a comprehensive Canada-style free trade deal between the UK and the EU, a deal that will protect jobs across this country, a deal that will allow goods, UK goods and components to be sold without tariffs and without quotas in the EU market, a deal which will, if anything, allow our companies and our exporters to do even more business with our European friends, and yet which achieves something that the people of this country instinctively knew was doable, but which they were told was impossible. We've taken back control of our laws and our destiny. We've taken back control of every jot and tittle of our regulation in a way that is complete and unfettered. From January the 1st, we are outside the customs union and outside the single market. British laws will be made solely by the British Parliament, interpreted by UK judges sitting in UK courts, and the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice will come to an end.
Let's bring you up to speed with the developments in Brussels. Benji has been monitoring developments over there. Benji, so fisheries and how to maintain a level competitive playing field. These are 2 key sticking points in the trade negotiations. How do they eventually arrive at a compromise that's now been baked into this deal?
Well, essentially they met in the middle, really. When they were so close to that deadline, someone had to budge. Both sides are claiming that they got victory over the other, but ultimately the EU had their demands, the UK had theirs, and they've met somewhere in between. On fisheries, for example, the UK wanted a reduction on the EU's access to British waters by about 80%. The EU said no. They ended up with 25% reduction. There also had to be a transition period to actually reach that new solution. The UK wanted that transition period to be 3 years. The EU said 10 years, forgive me, and they ended up with 5 years. You get the picture. Essentially, both had different demands on opposite sets of the spectrum, and they came together to some sort of compromise. On level playing fields, this is that essentially the UK would make sure, the EU, would make sure that the UK is not changing its competition rules way differently to the rest of the bloc. There's now going to be measures in place to ensure that no side detracts from what they've agreed in this deal. And so there is now an incentive for neither the UK or the EU to move away from what is already in this written text.
So where does this deal, though, leave the UK's financial services sector? Because services account for a massive amount of the UK's GDP, but also just as important, its access to EU markets, because there's talk of acts based on equivalence of rules and regulations, but at some point those are going to diverge, and this does create significant uncertainty, doesn't it?
It does, and it's a bit of a tricky area because financial services were not technically part of these EU negotiations, but a major part of trade between the UK and the European Union. It comes down to the word you just said, equivalent. So now, instead of complete access like the UK had before, that won't apply. There's now going to be essentially a set of measures on which Brussels can judge whether the UK has aligned or whether there's equivalence to the EU's regulations. And if it is, then the appropriate loans and grants, etc., will be given. I don't think either side are particularly excited, though, about what has been agreed. Boris Johnson, for example, who was elated at the deal being put in place, has admitted that actually not enough agreement has been there on the idea of equivalence, and there's been more criticism from the leader of the opposition Labour Party in the UK, Sir Keir Starmer, who says actually this is nowhere near what Boris Johnson promised, that it doesn't get anywhere close to the access we had before. So more work to be done in that area, but certainly a good start that there is now a deal finally agreed.
Not to mention all the questions it raises about sovereignty. But now that there's a deal on the table that's been agreed to, is there enough time for legislators, both in the European Parliament and in the House of Commons, to give their consent to it so that the transition from the 1st of January is seamless as possible?
It might not seem like it, but the answer is yes, actually. The EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, said with a great deal of relief that the clock is no longer ticking. It's all going to be done in time. That's not to say that it's over completely now. There are several more processes and steps. The EU Council has to have a look at it, all the ambassadors, the EU Parliament has to ratify it, the UK Parliament has to ratify it too. Some of that will happen before the 31st of December, the deadline. Some of it can actually happen afterwards, into 2021, and can happen retrospectively. So the point is that these new agreements coming from this new deal will be put in place on the 1st of January. There will be some other votes that could happen subsequent to that, but everything will be in order by that deadline at the end of the year.
One last question for you. What's the mood in Brussels? I mean, this has been one very long, drawn-out, acrimonious divorce in some parts ever since the UK voted to leave in the middle of 2016. What's the mood like, especially among strong supporters of the EU project?
Relief tinged with sadness is how it was described by Ursula von der Leyen and Michel Barnier. That essentially, even though people who were loyal to the European project didn't want the UK to leave, ultimately, at least now they are leaving with a deal, and there isn't going to be the chaos in a few days' time that there would have been if there had been a no-deal outcome. So that's not to say people who believe in the European Union are delighted with this. Of course, they didn't want Brexit at all. But the moment that Britain committed to it, and at the beginning of this year, in January, they officially left and entered this transition period, it became clear Brexit was a reality. And people have shifted their expectations and are now seeing this deal as a success. The fact that a deal has been done, a free trade deal, is quite remarkable given the timescale. And so the word that I think people are going to come back to here is relief. Just thank goodness it's been done before that deadline and people can now go and enjoy their Christmas.
Indeed. Benji Haya in Brussels. Merci beaucoup. Now, here's CGTN's Andrew Wilson tracing the long, acrimonious journey as far as the Brexit divorce is concerned.
From the very start, this was a battle of red lines that became ever clearer as this determined divorce dragged on for 4.5 years. Looking back, anti-Europe factions had been noisy for decades, but were always seen as unrepresentative of the public at large. In 2015, to appease and silence them, then Prime Minister David Cameron allowed a referendum. In hindsight, that was as reckless as the ensuing complacency of his Remain campaign.
We are approaching one of the biggest decisions this country will face in our lifetimes, whether to remain in a reformed European Union or to leave.
Because in 2016, an apparently comfortable status quo was suddenly overturned. And Cameron's political career was over.
But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination.
The UK first joined the European Union's forerunner, the EEC, in 1973. It was an uneasy alliance from the start. Britain, semi-detached from Europe, never fully in, turning its back on monetary union in the 90s to keep sterling over the European currency. With Cameron suddenly gone, his successor Theresa May took the reins but was quickly identified by the emboldened Brexit lobby as too reasonable for the task ahead. She needed a mandate and called a snap election in 2017, but instead of increasing her majority, she lost it. She was now at the mercy of lawmakers who repeatedly savaged her attempts at compromise with Brussels. The red lines were getting clearer. And so, after 3 failed attempts to win support for her deal, May had to throw in the towel.
I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
Boris Johnson was the Brexiteers' choice. He brought energy and determination to the cross-channel divorce project.
Because we're going to restore trust in our democracy. And we're going to fulfil the repeated promises of Parliament to the people and come out of the EU on October the 31st. No ifs or buts.
Johnson wanted it done, and when MPs tried to check his progress as they'd done with May, he pushed back hard. At one point last September, he actually suspended Parliament for 5 weeks, an unprecedented move that was ruled illegal by the UK's Supreme Court. Like May, Johnson went to the country for support. A snap election, and in December, was a bold, high-risk move. But unlike May, he won a resounding victory. A hefty majority of 80 meant on getting Brexit done, he had the public's support. The Eurosceptics could leave him to get on with it. The withdrawal agreement became law in February 2020 and negotiations began for a new deal. Only then did those red lines dividing a new UK sovereignty with privileged access to the European single market start to paint themselves in the public sphere. The symbolic issue of fishing rights and the economic practicalities of a level playing field took on such importance that the negotiators exhausted themselves trying to gain even an inch from the other side.
We keep calm, as always, and if there is still a way, we will see. Thank you. Au revoir.
Brussels, it was clear now, understood just how permanent Britain's new independence would be and the message it would send to others in an increasingly turbulent group of remaining 27 member states. Andrew Wilson, CGTN.
Now, the UK will place more parts of the country under Tier 4 restrictions from the 26th of December. That decision comes amid a surge in cases as concerns continue to grow over a fast-spreading new strain, as well as another detected from persons who arrived from South Africa. Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland have also announced some fairly nationwide restrictions.
The UK government has been forced to react with a new total of COVID cases and more than 20,000 people admitted to hospital in recent days. As worrying are the 2 new variants of the virus and how easily transmissible they are proving to be.
This new variant is highly concerning because it is yet more transmissible and it appears to have mutated further than the new variant that's been discovered in the UK. We've taken the following action. First, we are quarantining cases and close contacts of cases found here in the UK. Second, we're placing immediate restrictions on travel from South Africa.
After a tense 48 hours, some traffic is moving between the UK and France. Fresh food has to be trucked quickly, which is why usually up to 10,000 trucks a day pass through the port of Dover and the Channel Tunnel. Freight drivers are making the best of it, but require a negative virus test before they're allowed into France and on to their respective destinations.
This is not how it should work, yeah? Okay, Brexit one side, but other side is COVID. I don't know. We have no information. We need information. We need to be patient if they have information. If no information, maybe, I don't know, they get worried.
Tempers have flared as Kent police try to divert drivers from parking near the port in Dover. A few miles inland, the government estimates 3,000 truck drivers are waiting for COVID tests at a disused airport.
That's the end of my food, and we will stick here because they ask for PCR test for COVID-19, and we don't have where to do that. We make appointment to go in the airport to make a test, but the thing is now the roads are closed, and if we go, we can't come back. So we are stuck here. We are a group of 9 people.
Families in large parts of eastern and southern England will make the most of Christmas Day celebrations, if they can, as several regions will be in virtual lockdown the following. Problems are piling up for the government, and not just in Dover. Yolo Abdavid, CGTN, London.
The arrival of a coronavirus vaccine, in fact more than one, has the US travel industry preparing for a rebound following a historically terrible year. After months of deep discounts, with hotels offering lavish perks and airlines dangling tantalizing fares, prices are set to make up at least part of the ground they did lose. CGTN's Nita Soledad reports from Miami.
Hotel doors closed, restaurants and cruise ships idled. The COVID-19 pandemic decimated America's hospitality industry.
We lose everything. Insurance, seniority, we lose everything.
Norma Flores worked as a waitress at the Fiesta Casino in Las Vegas for 20 years.
My whole life, I lost all my speaking gigs, I lost all my trips, I lost everything. I basically haven't had revenue coming in since mid-March, like most people in this industry.
Scott Eddy, a global travel influencer and hospitality industry consultant, went from jet setting in the Maldives to experiencing tiny living in the Florida Keys. A vivid metaphor of the year 2020 for the hospitality industry. 8 out of 10 hotel rooms in the US are empty. 70% of hotel employees furloughed. US cruise operations are suspended until at least March of 2021, with an estimated loss of 30% in economic activity. And more than 250,000 American jobs gone. As for the restaurant industry, it has shed 2 million jobs and counting. The National Restaurant Association says that 110,000 restaurants have permanently ceased operations this year.
Number is down. Obviously, right now we are at a point, obviously, because we have to cut employees, we have to cut salaries, and thank God, our landlords is reasonable with us, so we're surviving. Obviously we're not making money.
I'm scared. In December, finish the unemployment, and I don't know what I'm doing. If I don't find a job, I don't know what I'm doing.
With the arrival of COVID-19 vaccines, there's some hope in the air. The International Air Transport Association is projecting a bump in air travel of 2021. Hotel rooms likely will start filling up again, and cruises should resume.
Unless the world ends, the travel industry is coming back, and it will come back fiercely.
Disruptions and restrictions aside, industry surveys find most Americans say travel is still important to them.
And it is Florida leading the early stage of recovery in America's travel industry, according to online travel platform TripAdvisor. Though travel is still low amid the pandemic, the Sunshine State is home to several destinations that are bouncing back the fastest. This weather here, hard to resist. Nitza Soledad Perez, CGTN, Miami.
Now, China's 5G phone shipments reached 144 million units in the first 11 months of the year. The market saw the entry of 199 new 5G models between January and November. The number of 5G users has also been growing rapidly in the world's second largest economy. According to the Ministry of Industry and IT, the number of devices linked into the 5G networks is now over 200 million just in China. The ministry also says 580,000 new 5G base stations were built this year, bringing the total number to over 700,000. On What's Hot Tonight, CGTN's Wang Wengjie explores what's next for China as it moves towards more digitalization.
As its industrial growth continues to lead the world, China has made significant technology innovations like smart manufacturing and 5G network construction, and governmental guidelines have been set to promote further 5G development.
要加快5G 工业互联网
Technology integration, including 5G, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things, will be fast-tracked so as to extend big data to the production process, from production and logistics to supply chains.
5G grid construction was a major achievement during the 13th five-year plan period. And as the 14th five-year plan period approaches, China aims to promote more long-term industrial digitization.
推动新一代信息技术与制造业的深度融合。
The digitalization of manufacturing industries will continue, and new intelligent products will be cultivated so as to promote development in a shared economy. This can ensure digital industrial structures with international competitiveness.
Experts say 5G is expected to have a more defined role thanks to the 14th five-year plan, especially in regards to stabilized investment, consumption promotion, industrial upgrades, and cultivation of new economic development drivers. Wang Mengjie, CGTN, Beijing.
You're watching Global Business. Time for a short break. Here's what's coming up. We'll explore entrepreneurship, how the government is trying to set up incubators for enterprises.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back to the programme. Let's head north to Egypt. The government over there set up an incubator to teach young entrepreneurs all the steps they need to properly run their SMEs. The move came after authorities realised that the majority of young people who set up SMEs failed thereafter, partly due to a lack of experience. The Cairo-based state-owned incubator is called rollout 2030. It's designed to enable young people to set up private enterprises and support the growth of entrepreneurship. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim with that on grassroots.
It is the graduation of the first batch of aspiring entrepreneurs at the state-owned Rollout 2030 project. This is an incubator that was established to help the youth set up successful business ventures.
The graduation projects today are centered around how high-tech can solve the challenges we face. There's a project in the health services, a project on education, another one on economic development and digital transformation.
The Rollout team provides the solid base and experience for young entrepreneurs as they embark on the new adventure.
We work on 3 dimensions. The training and teaching process is done through an accredited Cambridge University certificate, in addition to courses at the American and German universities in Cairo. We then follow up with them with consultancy and advice after they begin their project. Another dimension is awareness. We reach out to as many youth as possible, even in schools and universities, to highlight the importance of entrepreneurship as a career choice. It's better than looking for a job or employment.
Founder of one of the winning graduation projects.
It's mainly about it's like a digital platform whereby all the entities concerning with urban planning, whether governmental entities or private entities or even students who are studying urban planning, they are concerned. We're connecting all these parties to get the maximum profitability.
El Khatib says the Rollout 2030 will also help her connect with potential investors to fund her project. Experts say encouraging youth to establish SMEs is a benefit to the economy.
Most of the emerging economies are supported with the startups and small and medium enterprises. Therefore, it was crucial and essential to have this program up and running. It is a way to elevate the economy, creating more jobs, enhancing the standard of living and social living for the community as well.
The success of this program has prompted the government to set up similar incubators in different cities around the country in the near future. Yasser Hakim for CGTN.
And finally, some among us may have read Anna Sewell's classic, Black Beauty. The American entertainment juggernaut Disney is now putting its own spin on the book, and parts of this screen adaptation were filmed right here on the continent, specifically in South Africa's Western Cape. CGTN's Julie Shire has that story.
The Western Cape provides a breathtaking backdrop for the century-and-a-half-old classic Black Beauty. It's where Elbrus Ortayev runs horse training company Film Ecos. Ortayev's experience extends as far back as the Moscow Circus. He's worked on many international movies, but the Disney Plus production has been a highlight.
Black Beauty was a very special project. I mean, that comes once in a lifetime, yeah, and that will stay with us. As I said, we do lots of action stuff, but this was a little bit different, a little bit of everything what we did with the horses.
Disney's adaptation of the 1877 classic tells the story of a horse separated from her herd. She then forms a bond with a teenager at her new home. Elbrus needed to find the perfect animals to portray this emotional storyline.
We used lots of my horses, but still we're forcing horses for Black Beauty to have same look. It was a big challenge to go all over the country to look for the horses, to find from tiny ones, because we had like from the born one to the few weeks old one, then 6 months old, and all the different stages we had to show in that movie how horse actually grown up and became beautiful Black Beauty.
Ortayev had help preparing the animals for filming, which was completed in less than 2 months.
We had Cody Harris from Australia, which was one of the greatest trainers today. And with our host team, we did lots of continuous work with it, like to train those young horses and to become for that level of the film, because very specific. Behind we have our lead Black Beauty, which is Jenny. Cody Harris, he spent lots of time with this horse.
That Mustang's got a real mean streak.
Black Beauty has already been released on Disney Plus. It adds another notch to Cape Town's film industry, which employs at least 25,000 people and is already a popular choice among international filmmakers.
That's what I'll call you, Black Beauty.
Julie Shara, CGTN, Western Cape, South Africa.
And that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. As always, we'd like to hear your thoughts on the content you've seen on the programme in the last hour. Many ways to get your thoughts back to us, all of them on your screens right now. I'm Ramah Nyang in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Thank you for your company in the last hour. The World Today's up next from Washington, D.C.